Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to Canada. Welcome to the two teams of the second and final semifinal match of the Hague Inter-University Law Debate Tournament Edition 2023. My name is Anna Maria Urbanova, and on behalf of the Cork Foundation organizer of this edition, I'm delighted to welcome the debate teams of University of Western Ontario joining us from Canada and team from University of Manchester joining us from the United Kingdom. Welcome to the two teams. The participants have received at the same time a while back the debate statement for today's session. Actually, the debate statements were released even more in advance than usual for the rounds. This year, we are very thankful to our partner organization for this round, and that is the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, UNITAR, who was so kind to provide us with debate statements for the semifinals. The teams will be debating on one of those statements, which is that it is imperative that the international community move from the Universal Convention on Human Rights to the Universal Convention on the Rights of All Living Things, as poachers cannot be gamekeepers. So the two teams have prepared for the two sides of the argument. In a short while, they will discover which side they will be representing during the match. Of course, that is all from the beginning on the organizing team side. It is now time for the protagonists of this round to introduce themselves. So I'll be giving floor to University of Western Ontario debate team, Mr. Walsh.
Hello, my name's Jack Walsh, and I'm a second-year law student at Western University Faculty of Law.
Thank you. Welcome. From University of Manchester, Ms. Panay.
Hello, it's great meeting you guys and debating with you. Today, I'm a second-year law with politics student at the University of Manchester.
Thank you. Welcome. From University of Western Ontario, Mr. Reiser.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Spencer Reiser, and I'm a second-year law student at the University of Western Ontario Faculty of Law.
Thank you. Welcome. From University of Manchester, Mr. Beach.
Hello everyone, I'm Adam Beach, and yeah, it's just an honor to be here. It's a pleasure to meet you guys and excited for this debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. From Western Ontario University, Mr. Tigges.
Hi everyone. It's nice meeting everyone. I'm Rebecca. I'm a first-year law student at the University of Western Ontario, Faculty of Law, and I'm excited to debate today.
Thank you. Welcome. From University of Manchester, Ms. Alabida.
Hello, my name is Emmet Alabida. I'm a second-year law student at the University of Manchester, and I'm very excited for today's debate.
Thank you. Welcome. And also we're welcoming Professor Osterveld, who is the mentor for the University of Western Ontario debate team. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. It's really great to be here today. I look forward to hearing this debate.
Thank you very much. In a short while, you will see the screen with for the allocation of your debate position. So in a second. You could let me know, please, if you can see the screen. All right, I'm going to see the players. To the participants, if I can get an oral confirmation, so you can see the screen.
Yeah, we can see the screen.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. All right, as you can see, you have two options for each team, in favor and against. So for the debate statement of whether or not it is imperative that the international community move from the Universal Convention on Human Rights to the Universal Convention on All Living Things, particularly with the poachers that cannot be gamers, we'll know in a second. Okay. And on the account of today's session, the debate team of University of Western Ontario will be starting the match with the position in favor, and as such defending that it is imperative that the international community move from
Sorry to interrupt. I'm not sure if anyone else is experiencing this, but there's a little bit of feedback coming from your audio. I just wasn't able to catch the last 30 seconds of what you said.
So thank you. Thank you for the information. Is this a common issue for everyone?
It happened for me as well, but I can hear you again now.
Yeah, now it's good.
All right, thank you. I'll keep an eye or an e-route. Please send me a message should this become an issue for you again. But then just to confirm, the University of Western Ontario will be starting the match with the position in favor. Hence, you will be defending that it is imperative that the international community move from Universal Convention on Human Rights to a Universal Convention on the rights of all living things, as poachers cannot be the gamekeepers. And the debate team of University of Manchester will continue with the position against, and as such will defend that it is not imperative that the international community move from the Universal Convention on Human Rights to Universal Convention on the rights of all living things. All right, you now have 5 minutes to finalize your preparation, and feel free to start. Thank you, everyone. Your time for preparation is now over. We'll be starting the session with the team in favor, the debating of Western University. You have 4 minutes for your opening statement.
Good afternoon to our judges and to my colleagues at the University of Manchester. On behalf of myself and my teammates, Jack Walsh and Spencer Reeser, we are pleased to be here discussing this issue with you. Today, my team and I will be arguing that it is imperative that the international community move from a Universal Convention on Human Rights to a Universal Convention on the Rights of All Living Things, as poachers cannot be the gamekeepers. We will argue that the creation of a Universal Convention on the Rights of All Living Things will increase the health and welfare of humans, animals, plants, as well as the environment. First, I will argue that international law as it stands does not adequately protect the welfare of non-human living things. Further, I will argue that the proposed convention would help prevent environmental degradation. Next, Jack will argue that the proposed convention would be beneficial to humans as well as non-human living things. And last, Spencer will argue that a treaty governing all living things is not unusual, as there are currently numerous pieces of domestic legislation across the world that attach rights to non-human living things. Before beginning our arguments, it is important to understand which living things are currently protected by the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. The UDHR sets out fundamental human rights to be universally protected, including rights like the right to life, liberty, and security of person. UN Special Reporter on Human Rights and the Environment, David Boyd, defines the rights of nature as including the rights of non-human species and elements of the natural environment. What we are arguing is that the UDHR must be expanded to include rights for all of these groups. My first argument is that current international law does not go far enough to protect non-human living things from human exploitation and degradation. While international organizations do exist to establish health standards of non-human organisms, none go so far as to administer fundamental rights to these groups. The result of this exclusion is the decline of the welfare and existence of non-human living things. The United Nations body on the Sustainable Development Goals reported 4 years ago that almost 1 million species are threatened with extinction within the next few decades. The same report stated that 50% of agricultural expansion has occurred at the expense of forests, and 50% of live coral reefs have been lost since the 1870s. The report affirmed that the current global response to the degradation of non-human organisms is insufficient. A drastic change is needed in the international community to bestow fundamental protections which cannot be neglected. My second argument is that the inclusion of non-human living things in a Universal Declaration of Rights would serve as a solution to current challenges to habitat loss, extinction of organisms, and more broadly, climate change. The UN Convention on Animal Health and Protection, which has not yet been adopted, serves as a helpful model for what these rights would look like. In fact, many of the rights set out in the Convention read similarly to the policy recommendations stated in the aforementioned UN report. The right to not be killed unnecessarily when appropriate alternatives exist, for example, may translate to the right of forests to not be destroyed. The destruction of ecosystems like forests is inextricably linked to the increase in greenhouse gas emissions and a rise in the average global temperature. If non-human living things were protected to the full extent possible, then such harms would diminish. The inclusion of non-human living things into a Universal Declaration of Rights would provide them with the most secure form of protection. Thus, it is imperative that the proposal is implemented. Thank you for listening. I will now give the floor to my colleagues from the University of Manchester.
Thank you very much. University of Manchester, you have 4 minutes for your opening statement against.
Thank you. Can I make sure that everyone can hear me?
Yes.
Dear colleagues, esteemed judges, and distinguished members of the public, I stand before you today to argue against the proposal of shifting from a Universal Convention of Human Rights towards a Universal Convention on Rights of All Living Things. Our case will be presented into 3 sections. Firstly, I will focus on the collateral diminishment and undermining of human rights that may occur through the complexity introduced by such a shift. Secondly, My colleague Amal will discuss the adverse outcomes and implausibility of transitioning towards a universal convention of the rights on all living things, highlighting the potential legal consequences and litigations that might arise. And thirdly, Adam will advocate the enhancement and refinement of existing legislation that safeguards non-living things, as well as emphasizing the need to address deficiencies and gaps in the current legal framework, as well as advocate for the comprehensive and effective protection and enforcement of rights of human and non-human entities. Now, the existing framework of the international human rights law, embodied by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights Law and various international human rights treaties, have been meticulously crafted to protect and promote the inherent dignity and rights of human beings. Now, these legal instruments, adopted and refined by nations worldwide, form the foundation of human rights protection. The UHCR, adopted by the UNGA in 1948, reflects the international community's commitment to protecting fundamental human rights and freedoms. Now, a crucial principle we must consider is the balance between interests and prioritization, which lies at the heart of international law. While acknowledging the importance of environmental conservation and animal welfare, international legal instruments such as the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, or the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, prioritize the rights of well-being and well-being of human beings. These instruments, adopted by the UN, emphasize the protection of civil, political, economic, and social and cultural rights of individuals. Now, to strengthen our argument, let us explore the relevant cases and proceedings. In the landmark of the case Soring versus United Kingdom in 1989, the European Court on Human Rights emphasized that the significance of human rights, particularly the right to life and prohibition of torture. In this case, the court has clarified, therefore, that these rights were designated to protect human beings and did not extend to non-human entities. This is because it will be very difficult to differentiate between these two. Now, furthermore, the right to freedom of expression, as enriched by Article 19 of ICCPR, is a cornerstone of human rights protection. Once again, the European Court on Human Rights, in the case of Animal Defenders International versus United Kingdom in 2013, upheld that restriction on political advertisement by animal welfare organizations, recognizing that the primary purpose of freedom of expression is to safeguard the rights and interests of human beings. Another critical aspect to consider is the potential infringement on the right of property. Established international legal principles recognize private property rights as fundamental individual autonomy and important to economic development. In the case of James versus United Kingdom, 1986, once again, it's been emphasized that the importance of striking a fair balance between environmental conservation and property rights must be key. In conclusion, our aim is to present a concise and legally grounded perspective, upholding the importance of human rights while recognizing the urgency of addressing environmental concerns, and my colleagues will continue developing on these points. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. We are now entering the rebuttals. Western University debate team, you have 2 minutes.
I'd like to thank my colleague from Manchester University for her thoughtful argument that adopting this convention is overly complex and incompatible with existing legal frameworks. But while this may be difficult, it is necessary and desirable that existing legal systems adapt to comprehend a biocentric approach to conservation as this convention would put forward. When considering issues such as climate change, pollution, and deforestation, non-human life cannot be regarded only as objects, must instead be regarded within a larger ethical framework that entails a recognition of intrinsic values of all living things. Therefore, it is the legal systems that should adapt to take into account the rights of all living things. I will now move to our third argument, that by recognizing the importance of ecological system balance in our shared habitats, the proposed convention would result in positive outcomes for all humans, especially Indigenous peoples. The premise that the welfare of all living things directly affects the health and welfare of humans is not only a common sense principle, but one that is reflected in numerous sources of international law. As affirmed by the ICJ in the 1997 case of Hungary versus Slovakia, damage to the environment can impair and undermine all the human rights spoken of in the Universal Declaration. The UN Human Rights Council has also recognized the human right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment in 2021. And both the European Court of Human Rights and the Inter-American Court of Human Rights have made repeated references to the right to a healthy environment. Accordingly, a convention that implies a recognition of a species' right to exist and to be treated equitably is fundamentally connected to and fortifies the rights of humans to a healthy environment by legally limiting the level of environmental degradation occurring on a global scale. In addition, such a convention could also empower Indigenous peoples to make claims to their rights to land, water, and other resources. Thank you.
Very much. Debating at the University of Manchester, you have 2 minutes for your first rebuttal.
I would like to confirm that I'm audible.
You are.
Okay, perfect. Good afternoon, esteemed judges and colleagues. I would like to welcome you for the second time to today's debate from our side. In my substantive today, I will discuss the negative outcomes that would arise if we conflate the human rights paradigm with the rights of all living things. Today, before I would move on to my substantive, I'd like to address my rebuttal points. So primarily, the opposing side has articulated the urgency of adapting our legal framework to the urgency of climate change. But I would like to submit that the Declaration for All Living Things would only be declaratory. We still see human rights abuses today, and that is because the Human Rights Declaration is only declaratory. Our protection of human rights rests on constitutional frameworks. So although it is imperative that our judicial frameworks do respect the rights of all living things, it wouldn't do so through a declaration which conflates human rights and the rights of all living things. I would now like to move on to my substantive. Firstly, I would like to distinguish the nature of rights conferred to human beings from the rights that are conferred to other beings. One basis for legal personhood rests on the interest of the entity in question. Another basis considers the interests of currently recognized human persons. Persons have rights, duties, and obligations, things do not. Although there have been challenges to this binary framework, most legal systems maintain this distinction. Human rights conventions differentiate rights based on capacities and responsibilities of human beings, which are not comparable to those of living things. Now, having distinguished the two, I would like to turn your attention to the potential outcomes such a conflation of notions would yield. We have developed complex legal systems and institutions to safeguard our rights, ensuring justice and equality. By extending these same rights to all living things, we risk diluting the essence of what it means to be human and undermine the foundations of our civilization. The Human Rights Declaration provides for a foundation for our rule of law, and if we were to conflate these rights with the rights of all living things, by getting rid of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, this would threaten the firmness of the law. Instead of dismantling the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we'll focus on strengthening our commitment to environmental conservation through other legal means. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I beg you to oppose.
Thank you very much. Western University, and I have 2 minutes for your second rebuttal.
I want to thank my colleagues for their argument. However, I must respectfully disagree. My friends have argued that we cannot equate human rights with the lives of all living things. However, in the common law tradition, corporations, which are neither living things nor human beings, have had legal personhood and rights for over 150 years. Not only does this establish a clear precedent for extending legal rights to non-human organisms, but if we consider that our human right to life, in fact, emanates from nature, surely living beings and systems that we have that aren't humans have a great claim to legal personhood, if not a greater claim to legal personhood than a corporation. And in addition, my colleague noted that this is a declaration. However, today we are proposing a new convention, not a declaration. Now, today I will argue that the transition to a universal convention on the rights of all living things is neither a novel nor unique proposition, as there has already been successful legal recognition of the rights of non-human entities. In 2021, the Magpie River in Canada attained legal personhood. The rights of the river now include the right to flow, the right to maintain its natural biodiversity, and the right to sue. In 2016, in the Rio Atrato River case in Colombia, the Colombian Constitutional Court ruled that the river had legal personhood rights and that the government mining violated these rights. Now, the legislation and litigation protecting these rivers came about because current international law treaties do not give legal standing to water resources. For example, the International Convention on the Law of Non-Navigational Uses of International Watercourses only addresses water management from the perspective of participating states. In addition, the European Union Water Framework Directive recognizes the importance of protecting water resources, but views them entirely as natural resources belonging to states. In the same vein, it is clear that if we want to protect all living things, a universal convention on the rights of all living things is needed, as a patchwork of differing domestic legislation will not be sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Debate team of University of Manchester, you have 2 minutes for your second rebuttal.
Hello everyone. Firstly, I would like to address our esteemed opponent's argument. Their first speaker stated that current international law does not adequately protect living things, and we actually agree with this statement. However, I will argue that a universal convention on the rights of all living things would also not effectively or adequately protect these non-human living things, because other legislation and frameworks would give stronger obligations and more successfully protect these living things. An example is the International Convention for the Regulation of Whaling and the Whaling Commission, which successfully passed a 5-year ban on commercial whaling in 1986. This greatly reduced the number of whales killed. In the International Covenants on Human Rights, especially the economic, social, and cultural rights, the language used places relatively weak obligations on states with wording such as take appropriate steps from Articles 6 and 11. Whereas independent bodies, conventions, and treaties can place stronger obligations, such as banning whole activities. These are much more likely to be successful at actually protecting these living things. Additionally, the EU has passed a new law that obliges companies to ensure products sold in the EU have not led to deforestation and forest degradation. It means key goods placed on the EU market will no longer contribute to deforestation. We also have the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, which currently protects roughly 40,000 different species and bans international trade in species under threat. Obviously, we need more laws, commissions, conventions, and agreements to better protect all living things. The point I am stressing is that these alternate frameworks place stronger obligations, more powerful duties, and much better regulation than a universal convention of rights could. We need to protect all living things, we acknowledge this. However, a universal convention on the rights of all living things would not be as successful or as effective as using other frameworks and legislations. Thank you.
Very much. This concludes the rebuttals. Debate team of University of Western Ontario, you have 2 minutes for your conclusion.
I'd like to thank my colleague from the University of Manchester for their argument. However, I must respectfully disagree. My friends at the University of Manchester have argued that we should focus on strengthening existing treaties and frameworks, such as those that, protect animals and whales. However, these are not analogous to what the proposed convention would be, and they lack often enforcement. Such Dr. Aaron O'Donnell, actually from the University of Melbourne, an expert on the rights of nature, has stated that if enforcement mechanisms are not embedded within the law, which most of the time they are not yet, that it's not worth the paper it's written on. For example, the Wanganui River Treaty in New Zealand granted the Wanganui River as an independent entity. However, water companies continue to divert almost 80% of the river's flow for hydropower until their license expires in 2039. Therefore, a convention for protecting all living things is needed. Today, from the Western University, our first speaker, Rebecca, has argued that international law does not currently protect the welfare of non-human living things. She also argued that adopting the convention would help prevent further environmental degradation. Our second speaker, Jack, argued that the proposed convention would strengthen human rights in addition to the rights of non-human living organisms. And I, our third speaker, argued that although we have made progress in protecting ecosystems and rivers, domestic legislation is not sufficient for protecting all living things, and therefore the proposed universal convention is needed. Now, the world is facing an unprecedented environmental crisis with regards to climate change, pollution, and our habitats shrinking due to an endless cycle of development and exploitation. The proposed convention is an incredibly important step we can take to solve these issues. On behalf of Western University, Jack, Rebecca, and myself, we wish to thank our opponents from the University of Manchester for their submissions. We humbly ask the judges to agree that it is imperative that the international community move from... Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Debate team of University of Manchester, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you for the recognition. As I have the honor to close today's semifinal, allow me to summarize the key points presented by the opposition and explain why our case has prevailed. Well, our case was structured into 3 sections, each addressing crucial aspects of the motion. Firstly, we heighten the potential of collateral diminishment and undermining human rights that may occur through the great complexity introduced by such a universal convention on rights of all living things. We emphasized the need of perfecting the current legislation, which does, in fact, cover the rights of non-living things. Now we have to effectively separate these and make them function for both humans and non-living things separately. The opposition has argued in favor of developing international legal frameworks, but we emphasize the importance of enhancing and refining our existing legislation. By doing so, we can maintain clarity and efficiency in our legal instruments. They have mentioned that the Universal Convention would empower indigenous people. However, once again, we counter that by an unclear and overly broad legal framework, we could overcomplicate our current instruments and therefore be ineffective to all parties involved. Now, we firmly stand by our position, and we should prioritize perfecting the current legislative framework first, and then clearly separate the rights of humans and non-living things. This approach ensures clarity, efficiency, and comprehensive protection for all parties involved. Let us embrace the path of clarity, efficiency, and comprehensive protection as to reject unnecessary complexity which hinders the very rights we strive to safeguard. Together, we can forge a future where the rights of all beings, be it humans or non-living things, are honored into harmony and the humanity of the natural world which we all want to protect and treasure. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. This now concludes your semifinal match session that will be graded by and reviewed by the 3 judges independently. You can now relax, take a sip of water. I'll do a bit of filler and then we go back to the feedback session as per the tradition for the days for this year's edition. First of all, allow me on behalf of the organizing team to congratulate both teams and express our delight with seeing you progress throughout the competition from the first round in the group phase up until this moment. Well done to you both. And as we are in semifinals, at the end, I will mention also a little bit in regards to the final week that will be taking place next week in The Hague, also in regards to the final statements. And for now, a little bit of feedback on how did you find this match? If you perhaps already encountered this debate statement in your studies, and what did you think of the arguments presented forward from Western University? Mr. Walsh.
So this is not a topic that I'd previously encountered in my studies, and it was not one that I'd learned about, but from maybe more than any other topic that we debated, I really found that there is so many strong arguments on both sides that when the wheel was spun, I didn't feel like I cared one way or another, because I think that there's so many excellent points, and our colleagues from the University of Manchester made such a great job in bringing up those as well on the con side. It was really interesting to hear how this issue could be approached from so many different angles.
Thank you very much. From University of Manchester, Ms. Panait, how did you find today's match? Did you already perhaps encounter this topic?
Well, firstly, I want to thank the Canadian team for engaging into this debate with us. It was unbelievable debating you guys, and definitely a great learning experience, as we both had very strong arguments, and it was very interesting to actually, once again, argue opposition, even though our personal opinions may slightly differ or vary on this topic. However, no, this topic hasn't occurred so far in my studies. But once again, the research we have all put in this debate, I believe, is highly valuable and has immersed us into very interesting areas of the law. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And also a big thank you to United Nations Institute for Training and Research for providing the topics for the semifinals. It's been an interesting and enlightening experience to learn how the teams have approached them, particularly this match as well as the match that took place yesterday. Ms. Rodriguez from Western University, how did you find today's match?
I thought it was a great debate, and I thought the topic was a really interesting one as well. I agree with my colleagues. I haven't encountered this topic really at all. In my undergrad and international relations are also in my first year of law school. So, but it's interesting when you research a topic that you haven't heard of before, you realize how much there is to say about the topic. So it was a great learning experience. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Beach from University of Manchester, how did you find today's match?
I love today's match. It was a very stressful preparation period for us. However, we all had an exam due an hour before the debate started. So it was a really hard thing to prepare for, but it was really fun regardless. Yeah, they had some really interesting arguments, some of the things we had in ours as well. But yeah, it was great to hear their thoughts, and I don't think I've encountered it before in my studies, but I think in previous debates we might have touched a bit on like the right to a healthy environment and the rights of future generations. So we drew on some topics from there, which was interesting.
Thank you very much. From University of Western Ontario, Mr. Visa, how did you find today's match? And did you perhaps hear some of the arguments that your team prepared for the other side?
We definitely did hear some of the arguments on their side that we had prepared as well. So that was just interesting to see. I think great minds think alike a lot of the time. So I thought this was an excellent debate today, and all the best to the University of Manchester and our colleagues over there.
Thank you very much. From University of Manchester, Ms. Lapida, did you have a chance to hear any of the arguments your team prepared, perhaps from the other side? What did you think about today's match?
I definitely thought it was a very interesting match, enlightening in fact. I have not encountered this type of framework. Maybe, as Adam said in other debates, that we should respect the rights of future generations, but definitely not in a sense where we would combine it with the human rights paradigm. Very interesting researching the topics. I thank the organizing team for coming up with these ideas. But yeah, I really did enjoy the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And indeed, once again, thank you to the Unitar for providing the statements for today's round. Professor Osterveld, if you have any words to share with the teams for the feedback for this match.
This was a fantastic match. I congratulate both teams for their really thoughtful arguments and for putting forward forcefully their side.
Thank you very much. And indeed, well done to the two teams for executing your research. I always say that, but it becomes more and more true with every round. And I don't know, at a certain point, if the competition kept going beyond the finals, I think it would just be a shining beacon of truth every time, like one of the speakers would come on the screen. On that aspect, now a bit of organization aspects in regards to the future, to the results of your match and to the final week that you can expect. So the results, we try to work with the judges to get the discourse within the 2 business days of the match taking place. So at the earliest, you might get the results tomorrow in the evening. Possibly it's a likelier expectation to expect them on Wednesday. We'll try to communicate if there might be a partial result. So we understand that the team from Canada is considering traveling to The Hague depending on the result of the match. I wonder if that's also the case for the team from the United Kingdom. Either way, if there is an indication, we'll communicate to the two teams. And for the final week, of course, there will be also a reminder, but please, if you're considering coming to The Hague, do register for the visit. There are some spots limited for some of them, so we are more than happy to send names to the institution so they can expect you. Right, and that would be from the organizing side. And now a bit of networking between the teams. If you might already have a connection in between the two universities or perhaps between the students. We've heard some of the students already prepared a group chat with each other, so perhaps that might be a way to stay in touch. From Western University, Mr. Walsh, do you know anyone in UK? Have you had a chance to go to UK?
I've traveled to the UK just as a tourist a couple times. I've never been to Manchester, but I did my master's degree in Dublin, and so there were a lot of Brits studying with me at the same time, and I had the opportunity to travel across the water to the UK on several occasions.
All right. Ms. Panait, perhaps did you have a chance to visit Canada, or do you have any classmates or friends from Canada?
Well, last time I checked, I did not visit Canada, but I would definitely love doing so in the future. I actually have a friend through the European Law Students Association. She's Canadian from Toronto, actually. She's currently in Birmingham doing her undergrad studies. So yeah, maybe I will talk to her and she should take me to visit you guys. Thank you.
All right, perhaps visit in the future. Ms. Rodriguez, did you have a chance to visit UK, or do you know perhaps anyone from United Kingdom?
Yes, I have had the chance to visit the UK a few times. I do have family in and around London. So I've visited as a child. I haven't been for a very long time. It is on my list, so maybe sometime soon. Yeah, it's a beautiful place. Hopefully I can go soon.
Indeed. Mr. Beach, do you have a chance to travel to Canada at any point, perhaps particularly to Ontario, or do you know anyone from Canada?
Unfortunately, never been to Canada. I do know quite a lot of people in Canada, though, dotted around at the various unis. I don't think I know anyone in Western Ontario, though, unfortunately, but I'd love to visit. It seems like a really nice place, and the nature seems really nice to look at as well. So, yeah, given the opportunity, I'd love to visit.
All right, so already perhaps some plans for the travels are happening, at least for some of you from Western Ontario. Indeed, Mr. Reeser, did you have a chance to visit the United Kingdom, or do you know anyone?
Unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to visit the United Kingdom yet, and I don't have any friends or people that I know too well over there, but I really do look forward to traveling there in the future.
And from United Kingdom, Mr. Labadette, did you have a chance to perhaps visit Ontario, or do you know anyone from Canada, perhaps Ontario, Canada?
I have not gotten the chance to visit yet, but I have family in Canada, and I was considering doing my year abroad there. So it's definitely on my list. I'd love to visit one day, but the opportunity has not arisen yet.
All right. Professor Osterveld, did you have a chance to visit the United Kingdom, perhaps even recently?
I have visited the United Kingdom a number of times. The United Kingdom is the host of the Preventing Sexual Violence in Armed Conflict initiative, and they've held some conferences there. That's my area of study, so I've had the pleasure of visiting London in particular, but hopefully someday I will be able to go to the University of Manchester.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Perhaps just a side note or the information for the participants of the match and also perhaps for the public. The Debating from University of Manchester is also, I believe, at the moment, the board of the ELSA organization, ELSA chapter in your university. So perhaps a good point of communication between the two universities can already be started there. And on that note, if you had a chance to welcome the other team in your university or on your home ground, what would be that you would show them, or where would you take them, perhaps for some good food or sights to see? Perhaps starting with the debate team from Western University. Whichever one of you wants to take the floor first.
I guess I can go. And I think the one thing that Canada is known for is Adam had mentioned is is its nature. It's really the Canada's lakes and hiking. The opportunity to go canoeing or on a camping trip is really the highlight for a lot of people who visit the country. And it's one thing that I think Canada has that no other country in the world has as well.
So if there's anything you want to add, perhaps Mr. Rodriguez or Mr. Rice.
I mean, there's always the cliches, the CN Tower and Niagara Falls, which is where a lot of family that's visited us we take. So those are nice places. I was born and raised in Toronto, so I'm very familiar with not just the touristy areas, but also just the local areas and all the different types of cultural communities in Toronto. I think it's really great to be able to see all the diversity in the different cultural communities in Toronto. So I would recommend if you're ever in Toronto, to maybe ask around, and there's like Greek town and Italian town and things like that. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Good itinerary, perhaps to start with. For the debate team from University of Manchester, what would you take the other team? Should they come to visit your home ground to see, or perhaps some activities to do? What would you recommend to see in the area or in the city itself?
I think the entertainment industry in Manchester is really, really good. There's a lot of like up and coming comedians and artists and music that you can go, and the nightlife is really good as well. A lot of DJs and aspiring musicians and that type of thing. So if you ever come, I recommend going out and going to different places and theatres and that sort of thing.
Ms. Panay or Ms. Al-Abda, if you would like to add anything.
As I've been in Manchester for just 2 years now, I'm not the greatest expert, but I have to agree with Adam. I feel like whenever you visit some certain place, if you go out for a pint, you'll definitely get to know the culture and the people much better. So you will immediately immerse. So yeah, up to you. You going out once again, entertainment, drag shows. Everything is pretty fun in Manchester. The people are full of life and very free. So yeah.
That's really wonderful. On that account, we hope that teams have a chance to stay in touch, perhaps even see each other in person in the final week. Of course, the results will be communicated to you as soon as possible. And should you consider coming to The Hague, please register as soon as possible as well for your site for the activities. And wishing you all the best for the rest of your day. In Canada, you're just starting your Monday, I believe. And here in Europe, we'll be soon closing the day. So congratulations to both teams and well done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Take care.